Welcome to the After Dark podcast with Anthony James and Conrad. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode.
Hello, and welcome to the After Dark podcast. I'm Anthony James, and that's Conrad.
Hello.
Well, Conrad, how you been this week?
I've been good, thank you. That was a very sort of like an after dinner kind of speaker intro you did there. So like, hello friends. And
yeah. I was going after your thing with the advert we made for the best podcast ever.
Yeah.
Hello friends.
Sit yourself down a spell and let me talk to you about a TV show called Dark.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I don't feel like a fraud this time because we genuinely haven't recorded the After Dark podcast in a week now. So I actually feel like I am, able to say how you've been this week because over Christmas we were recording crazy amounts.
Yeah, we were recording a lot, and now I don't remember how to do the After Dark podcast anymore because it's been like a week since we did it.
Yeah, but having said that, we're only 3 episodes. Well, after this, we're only 2 episodes to the end of Dark. Let me ask you a question. Do you feel like this episode is actually leading to the end game now?
Yeah, sort of. I think I can see the plane coming into land in the distance, but it's kind of like dipping a little bit and like waving, and I'm like, what's happening here, guys? Like, which runway are you landing on? But I think I know, but it's entirely possible that they could pull a Yui at the last minute.
Pull a Yui.
Yeah, that's what it's called on a plane, right?
I love that because you say pull a Yui because that's like a real sort of like driving slang term, right? Whereas later on in the episode, we'll be talking about a slang term from my childhood that involves giving someone a lift on a bike.
Okay, I wonder now I'm fascinated to hear if that's the same as what it would have been from my childhood. We'll see. Stay tuned.
Let's keep the listeners waiting for that one.
Yeah.
But so there we go, guys. It's a really exciting time. As you know, we've just changed the channel, YouTube channel. The audio listeners might not know this. But we've just changed our YouTube channel to be called The Culture Cave, and Conrad's now a joint owner of that channel, which is very exciting, and we're very happy with the way it's looking, and hopefully we'll be able to provide content going forward. But just audio listeners should know, if you've subscribed to the YouTube channel but you don't really check it out that much because you're more of an audio listener, that's fine, but we've changed. So if you see it pop up as The Culture Cave, that's who we are now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff on there now as well, so just go to the YouTube channel, check it out.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on there, a lot of plans for the future. It's all going great. Right, okay, so I think we're probably going to be talking about this one for a while. I say that. Every time I say we're going to be ending soon, we end up going another 3 hours. So by saying we're going to talk about it for a long time, maybe I'm jinxing it in the opposite direction, but I think
we'll get the first podcast under an hour.
Yeah, exactly. So subscribe to the podcasting apps if you haven't already. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Culture Cave. This is a Culture Cave production. We're going to do something with that in the future, I'm sure. Could you please also send us an email to adpodmail@gmail.com if there's questions or comments or anything you want to throw our way. As well as that, leave a comment on this video for questions for Conrad for episode 7 of season 3. We are getting there now. And I think that's all I have to say. So let's go straight into it then, Conrad.
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, let's break it down!
So the episode opens with maybe one of the coolest reveals, parallels, perpendiculars we've seen in the show. Basically, Marta having been shot. So we know that Adam still shot her in this one. Jonas, who we then will learn soon will be the one to go on to be Adam, runs and takes shelter in the basement. Because I said to you last week, I think, Conrad, how do you think he survived? Well, there you go. It's simple as that. Just run to the basement.
I feel like this is... it's not that big of a deal, but I feel like this is kind of cheating. It's a bit of a sort of Deus Ex basement that's happening, because at no point has anyone mentioned this house having a basement in two seasons of television, which it would... I think what I would have liked is if they'd have set up a basement
once in the first season.
Well, yeah, I think what would have been cool is in the second season if they'd have established there as a basement, because then when Marta dies and Marta is shot and the apocalypse is coming, you think that's where Jonas is going to go, and then old Marta comes and gets him, and you think, oh, okay, the basement was just a red herring, and then we return to it here, and it's like, that's smart. So that's the one thing I would have changed here, not to play backseat writer, but I was a bit like, you're kind of cheating here, guys. Like, by just being like, basement, bam.
Yeah, well, let's also just say, come on. We also you know, I think we could write this show better. Let's be honest. And
they fucked up so many things. Like they fucked up Rick Astley. They fucked up School on a Sunday.
Yeah.
What else are they going to get wrong before the end of this?
Like we just know 100%. We know that these writers don't put any thought into anything they do.
Yeah.
So it was a bit. Yeah, it's a bit of an oversight here, I would say.
Yet another glaring oversight in the history of Tar.
Yeah, but yeah. So that's. But to be honest with you, yeah, I know what you mean. It is a bit of a Deus Ex basement, but at the same time, you know, there's always that question. Well, did we need set up for this part because maybe we didn't see this Jonas as, you know, all this sort of thing as well.
Yeah. It's a very minor thing, but it just stuck out to me as a bit like, okay, all right, you've earned enough goodwill to get away with this once, but don't do it again, dog. But apart from that, yeah, the actual reveal itself is actually, to be honest, when I first saw this, I was my if I'm being 100% honest with myself, my initial reaction was just what. And it wasn't until he turns up again later that I was like, oh, okay, all right, fine, we're doing this, are we?
Yeah.
Like, I thought it was just you know, maybe him you know, the end of you've seen La La Land, right?
Yeah.
You know the end of La La Land.
That's
where
the reason why
that's
the reason why, to be honest with you, La La Land was very sour to me. Like I think I generally liked the film, but when I finished watching La La Land, I was a bit soured on it because I didn't like how they had their cake and ate it too with their endings.
Oh, what, by showing like how their life could have gone differently?
Yeah, I think I need to watch it again. Maybe my opinion would have changed, but at the time,
I find it very like bittersweet, like because it's basically saying this could have worked out if you'd have made some different choices, but unfortunately it didn't. But that's what I thought they were doing. That's what I thought they were doing here. I thought it was like Jonas moments before death, being like, I should have just gone to the basement. But as it turns out, it wasn't that.
Yeah, it wasn't that. So basically, we'll learn later in the episode basically more of what's going on. But yeah, so Adam never was rescued by Alt Marta. He then grew up to be Adam. But we also learn later, which we'll get into more detail, it's not like, as you had theoried before, it being another Jonas or the next Jonas. It's actually just that they've both been happening at the same time.
Yeah, it's just like there's an inflection point, essentially, in time where they go off in separate directions.
Yeah, and we'll get into much more conversation about that later whenever we get to the actual Eva scene where she's drawing it, you know.
Yeah.
But that's just to prime you guys. Also, we get straight away, the stranger wakes up. And I don't know about you, right? But for me, this moment was the biggest step towards Adam the Stranger took for me. And I'll tell you why. Because up until now, in the third season, we've been following Jonas in the alt world. And once he gets shot and killed, and then we get pulled back to this Jonas, even though this Jonas is the same Jonas up until the point they split or whatever, the inflection point, they basically have the same life, so it's the same Jonas. I started feeling distant towards Stranger now, because I'm like, well, our Jonas is dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's how I kind of started feeling.
Well, yeah, and the show is very explicitly saying this is the guy who's going to turn into Stranger and turn into Adam.
Yeah.
And there is absolutely that disconnect in the same way there is with the alt Marta, or the younger alt Marta. But I mean, that's a whole kettle of fish in and of itself. Which alt Marta am I talking about? Yeah, but there's like 3 of those younger alt Martas now, so it's becoming quite complicated, quite difficult to keep track of which alt Marta we're talking about. I can see why they gave her a scar now, purely from a presentational perspective. It's like, okay, that one's got the little cut, that one's got the big scar, that one hasn't got either of them. Nice, finally we can tell the difference. But yeah, this moment where Stranger burns the letter. I mean, first off, the letter, based on what we know from the last episode, the letter that Stranger has in his possession just feels like total manipulation from the Martyrs now, which I think is confirmed later on in this episode. And it's constructed by the alt Martyrs to keep him blindly following this path. But it's interesting to me that he burns the letter, but we know that he will give it to Noah to hand back to himself. Which means he must know what their plan is, because he's still keeping that, like, he will still utilize the letter like later on in his cycle.
Yeah, but
which means he doesn't care.
But I don't know if he's not thinking about it in that moment, in my opinion.
Or when he burns it,
he's not thinking, well, I'm gonna have to get this back somehow. Like,
I think when he burns it, he's like, that's just him like rejecting their plan. But I think the fact that he burns it but we know we'll get it back later.
Yeah.
And will give it to himself. Give it to himself via young Noah.
Yeah.
To me implies that Adam, as he is now, knows exactly what the martyrs are planning, and either doesn't care about it or thinks he's got them figured out.
Well, by the end of this episode, we see that he very much does think
that
he's got it all figured out. And maybe he does. Like, that's what I love about the end of this episode. But
I just love like the kind of Machiavellian plans within plans here. It's like have throughout this season, it's been like have the martyrs figured out or have Eric Lux figured out Sic Mundus, or have Sic Mundus figured out Eric Lux.
Exactly.
And it's this constant like it's almost like a boxing match. Just this back and forth. Yeah. And by the end of this episode, you're like, Sic Mundus won that round, guys.
yeah, exactly. I love that about this. It really is. And it's just so fun. It's so good. Right, okay, so he burns the letter. We then sort of they read what the letter said.
Yes.
What did you think about that? Like, obviously they gave it to us at the start of an episode, so it's not like a huge reveal. They knew it wasn't gonna. It holds a lot of dramatic weight, but it's also not like, oh my god, that's what it said. You know, it's not really like that.
I think the only bit that really is, most of it just felt like emotional manipulation to me. The bit that really stood out to me was the repetition or the recurrence of the "we are a perfect match" line, because I don't think Jonas ever said that to Old Marta, which makes me wonder how she knows that line, or whether it's just this innate connection between them that leads them to choose the same words.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that, to be honest with you. But also I understand that Eva would have been pulling the strings of that letter being written, and Eva sort of seems to know a lot these days.
Yeah, I guess maybe Claudia or someone could, like, by the end of this episode, we find out that Prime Claudia is being manipulated, or was being manipulated, to feed her information. So I guess maybe she told Eva about the loving words that Jonas and Marta have exchanged in her world.
Yeah, because also we see by the end of this episode that Claudia and Jonas are going to be spending a fair bit more time together too. So
yeah.
Like they sit down after like working with this God particle or whatever, and they're like, yeah. So one time I said, perfect match, and that's just, and Claudia's like, I'm telling that to Eva.
We're here for 33 years. Better get to know each other.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay. So name of the episode. Yeah. They give it to us. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get this one right, because let's be honest. It said so much in the show.
Yeah.
Licht und Schatten.
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed that, to be honest. It's a nice nice, simple, punchy title.
I think it's one of those ones that said so much in the show. It's like, if I had a penny for every time in this show in the third season they say in your world and in mine, right?
Yeah.
I'd have at least 24 pennies.
Yeah. I think you'd be a wealthier, not necessarily wealthy, but a wealthier man than you are now.
Slightly wealthier, yeah. All right, so the day of the apocalypse. Bum, bum,
I got immediate James Franco from Ballad of Buster Scruggs first time meme vibes from this, like, day of the apocalypse. Like, we've been here before, this old chestnut.
Excuse me. All right, so next up, we get Magnus being a bit more of a Nielsen than we've seen before.
Yeah, a bit more of an, like, very, very reminiscent of when Ulrich was told about Mad's body turning up, and he just questioned whether his kids were on drugs.
Yes.
Magnus shows, he's a chip off the old block here by just immediately being like, "Shut up, Marta.
Yeah, what's wrong?
The world's not going to end."
Yeah, so it doesn't go very well, let's be honest. We see that she's got the little St. Christopher pendant. That pops up a fair few times. In this. She's also washed her hands, so good on her. Yeah, so I think this is just sort of showing that she's sort of being frozen out by many people in her life, which is going to force her down the particular path she needs to be down. So then we cut from that innocent Alt Marta, who's now sort of becoming a little less innocent, to scarred Eva Alt Marta, who is getting a chat from stranger Alt Marta.
Yeah.
About Jonas and things like that. What do you think about this little scene?
Yeah, so there's a few of them in this episode, and Dark does this a lot, but a nice match cut from the St. Christopher pendant in one of the innocent Alt Marta, or she's not that innocent anymore, but I'm going to keep calling her it, innocent Alt Marta's hand to punished Alt Marta's hand, which is a very nice cut. I think, like, the content of what they're saying is just manipulation again. Stranger Marta is trying to, assuage some of the guilt that the younger Alt Marta probably feels.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I really loved about this scene was the depiction of like the sort of sand filled Eric Lux HQ. It's sort of, it feels almost like a tomb in Indiana Jones, and you've got lights streaming in from the ceiling behind them, which to me implies that in the future something has blown a hole in the ceiling, which, given how far underground we suspect this is, means something really, really fucking big hit the ceiling of that that room, or that temple, or whatever you want to call it. It's just a really nice kind of moment of world building without anything being said. It implies a lot about the post-apocalypse.
Yeah, exactly. And there's something I noticed about the scene that I didn't notice before. And in that room, underneath tarps, are the huge sort of apparatus that are used within Eva's black matter machine.
Yeah.
So in my mind, that's saying to me that at a certain point in Eva's life, she's like finished doing things. She's like, all right, we've done everything we need to do. Maybe at the end of this episode, even, that's how she feels. So we've done everything we need to do. Yeah. And then she sort of dismantles her machine because she doesn't want it to be used anymore.
Yeah. She sends the boys off at the end of this episode, and maybe that's her done. She's just like, dust the hands.
Yeah. I also think that it's confirmed that Eric Lux's like sort of place here is in the caves. I think that it's actually in the cave. So every time that we see them walking into it, it's always through the cave door, like through the opening of the cave.
That is true, yeah.
Also, later on, when we see her big dark matter machine, you might notice that it's actually in the same part of the cave, I think, that we originally saw the barrels in season 1.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, I hadn't really put 2 and 2 together on that, but that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, even further compounds my theory that maybe like a bomb hit the ground above this or something to blow a hole in the ceiling, which means it was a pretty damn big bomb.
Yeah. It also makes me think, like, I'm assuming that Eric Lux had a similar history to Sic Mundus in that they were like sort of started up by Tannhaus and the family and all. That's what I'm assuming, but that might be completely wrong, because the only reason I'm assuming that is because this place was obviously built in a similar time scale to the other one. So who the hell built this? You know, Eva went back in time and just like brought builders in to build it.
Yeah. She brought some builders back from through time from the 80s or whenever this is, to be like, I need you for just a weekend, just a weekend job.
Yeah, and then just like throw them through a portal to like 904 or something.
Yeah, long suckers.
Yeah. All right. So next scene, it goes to another Alt Marta.
This messed me up.
And she's in a cage. Explain how this... basically, Adam is talking to her in the cage. How did this mess you up?
Well, because we've now... This is the third Alt Marta.
In a row, basically.
In a row. So I was like, okay, I understand that we've got 2 Alt Martas. We've got the one who hasn't killed Jonas yet and the one he just has. I get that. I'm happy with that. That's all straight. And then we see this other one, and I was like, what's going on here, guys? Again, it wasn't really until Jonas shows up later in this episode that I kind of put 2 and 2 together and was like, oh right, so the inflection point affects both of them, basically. I don't exactly know what the inflection point for Marta is, whether it is the same moment where she travels across worlds or doesn't, I guess.
But it's interesting put that. It's interesting that that's the theory you're coming out with there, because in my mind, I don't want to feed you too much here, but I know what's coming in the next 2 episodes. So I think no matter how much I feed you, it's still gonna blow your mind. But but I'll just say, like, my understanding of this Alt Marta is, okay. So at the end of season 2, we get Alt Marta in the black clothes with the short hair, right?
Yeah.
She then takes Jonas to the Alt World. She then goes to back to 1888.
Yeah.
She then, after doing that and like giving them the dark matter, she then goes to Adam in the present time. So that's where this Alt Marta is currently now. So basically, the Alt Marta who we've been following the whole time, sort of the innocent Alt Marta, at the end of this episode, whenever Magnus and Franziska come there, they're picking her up, and then she's going to be told by Adam to go and save Jonas. That's where my head was at this point. And so this Alt Marta is actually just like 2 days on or whatever from the one we're following.
Oh, okay. Because I assumed that this was that was the one who comes back with the scar on her face. But actually, that makes more sense to think the one with the scar on her face has been up to different stuff that we haven't actually seen yet.
But this one doesn't have that scar on her face.
Yeah, but
and based on what happens at the end of this episode, how would that happen?
She might be alive. We don't know.
Oh yeah, like time travel. Do you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was assuming everything that we're seeing happen to the martyr in captivity has already happened to the one with the scar on her face. But I think it actually makes more sense for this to be the one that we've seen doing all the alt martyr stuff, and the one with the scar on her face is the one that we haven't seen.
Well, I think although this is a very dubious term to use for this show, I think the storyline of our alt martyr we've been following, Innocent alt martyr, and this one in the cage, is pretty linear actually. That's a very dubious word to use for this show, but I think it is. I think like at the end of this episode, you know, Innocent alt martyr gets taken by Magnus and Francisca. So when I was watching this in my head, I was like, oh, okay, so she's now going to go and save Jonas, go to the 1888, and then end up in the cage. You know?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And yeah, the
question does become though, who the hell is the scarred one?
Yeah, I mean, she's a real piece of shit. Is who she is.
Yeah, like getting like a ball of this energy thrown at her made her like become evil. Basically, that's what did it.
Yeah.
She all of a sudden realized Jonas didn't want the best for her.
No. She thought, I don't know if this guy cares about me as much as he says he does.
All right, what did you make of Bartos finding out about Boris's true nature?
This is a really refreshing scene actually, because this is I've expressed my disappointment a couple of times with the Ulrich Charlotte storyline in season 3, because it's just mainly showing us stuff we've seen before.
Yeah,
it's kind of boring. I don't need to see it again. This is the alt stuff I want to see. This is the characters that we know, but they're having conversations we haven't seen them have before. They're getting information that we've never seen them receive, and they're having interesting reactions as a result. So I really like this scene, and it's also it struck me that this is probably the longest that we've seen these two characters talking to each other in the entire show, which is interesting given their father and son. They haven't really interacted much, to be honest, if at all, up until this point. But it's really cool. I think I felt like Bartos' character throughout this episode is being given the knowledge he needs to become a player in the time travel stuff. He's sort of being given a crash course in time travel by his. I mean, this isn't really what Alexander says to him here. Alexander / Yasin, sorry, just to get that in there. What the information he's being given here by his dad isn't really time travel related, but it kind of starts to sow those seeds of cynicism and suspicion around what's gone before, which when combined with what Marta does with him later in the episode, will, I think, set him off down some interesting paths. We'll come back to that later. I have quite a big Bartos theory in this episode.
Okay, cool. I actually really love this scene as well, and it's because we've talked about it before. Like with the Alexander storyline, we're sort of seeing the other side of it. We saw his meeting with Obendorf and all that, but I also like that now that Regina has passed away in this world already, he feels maybe less like he just needs to protect his love for her and protect their relationship, and he feels more able now that he doesn't have Regina's to worry about. He sort of feels more able to do the morally right thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's definitely the case.
Yeah, exactly, and I really like that as well. I think it's a shame that Bartos didn't get over it quick enough, because it is the last time he's probably going to see his dad. So
yeah. I mean, well, who knows? He might get a time machine by the end of this episode.
That's true. And having said that, actually, I don't think Yasin went missing in this.
No, you're probably right.
In this old world, which actually that puts a spanner in our Yasin is Alexander theory, because if he doesn't go missing, he wasn't in the bunker. So how did he survive the apocalypse? Maybe redraft this whole thing.
No, we'll find a way out of this. Don't worry.
It's been so consistent so far.
I mean, Noah goes to get Ellie. We don't know what he did after that. Yeah. So maybe he drops off Yasin at the bunker, and we simply haven't seen that yet.
It's true. Because we can only assume that Yasin and Ellie still are going out at that point. So that would mean that Noah's still jealous. So something probably had to happen.
Yeah. Imagine the tension and the sparks flying in that bunker when Noah comes back and drops Yasin off as well. It's like, have fun, you kids, and then just shuts the door and just an explosion outside.
I think he sent him back to Marburg 33 years ago.
yeah, and said, "Okay, you can't ask any questions, but your name is Boris, all right?
Yeah, just get on with it.
Just trust me on this one.
Go
you
and
need to go and rob that bank."
Yeah, exactly. You must make your past happen, Yasin. All right. So then we get a little bit more of that storyline that you're a bit bored by. I understand completely what you mean, and I think on the first time watching, I wasn't really bored by it, but on rewatches, I find myself wanting to fast forward. If I'm honest with you, and but the thing is, in my opinion, it's needed. Like, it's needed because there's a lot of things that I would be like, if they didn't show it, I'd just be like, hang on a minute. And I know every fan would be. Mikkel wasn't taken, so how the hell did Helga lose his eye? Like, that would be the biggest question everyone would have, and it would be like, Dark has a plot hole. So they had to show a storyline about how Ulrich would do that. Also, you had to get the actor in somehow as well. So
what, for Ulrich?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's just a bit like, I personally, when I saw Helga with his one eye, I was like, oh, okay, so Ulrich's going to go back and beat his eye in instead, and it's, I'm fine with that. Like, it's a nice little nod to the difference. I don't need you to spend any time on this. Really, the thing that's carrying this storyline at the moment is Hannah doing her best Glenn Close in Fatal Attraction impersonation here. Just like, she is going to kill one of Charlotte's birds. Oh, well, she's actually not, because of what happens to her by the end of this episode. But she, when she hugs Charlotte in this scene, it's a bit like, I hope you don't have any pet rabbits, because Hannah is going to boil them, Charlotte. But
that's the thing. All of Charlotte's birds are already dead.
That's true. Yeah. So I don't know who she'd boil. Like Peter, maybe. I don't know. Like. But yeah, I think the only thing apart from that about this scene that I enjoyed was when Ulrich comes in and they're both there. He could not look more guilty. The expression on his face, it's just like, oh, like
a work colleague of his comes to his house and he doesn't think there's any reason why she should be there, and he's just like, what are you doing here?
It's like I feel like the direction for the actor who plays Ulrich was just look as suspicious as you possibly can for this scene, please.
Yeah, exactly. I did like the little sciencey thing about like the pennies are the exact same penny. I like the shot of the two engravings. I did like
that was cool.
I think that looked pretty cool. Okay, so then we get Dark does, especially early on in the first season, there was a lot of tropes that they very much leaned into, right? I think Marta cutting her own hair.
Are you going for the rage haircut?
The rage haircut is definitely a trope they're leaning fully into here.
Oh yeah, especially in like an 80s movie as well, or 80s influence stuff. Like the girl cutting her hair in a rage is classic 80s teen drama fodder, which I very much appreciated.
Yeah, I liked it too.
I had a question for you from this scene.
Yeah.
So this is probably just set dressing, but it interested me enough to make a note of it. So in Marta's room, and I'm sure it's been there the whole time, I just haven't noticed it up until now, but she has like the little kind of charcoal drawings on her wall that are very reminiscent of the kind of art that Michael Kahnwald did. But obviously Mikkel doesn't become Michael Kahnwald in this world. So who do you think those are from?
Well, I'm assuming she did them. And I think what they're trying to do there is just a little bit of world building, sort of pseudo explanation of stuff, because we know that Michael Kahnwald appeared to Jonas in the first episode, covered in what we now probably know is dark matter, but it could have also been black paint because that's what he worked with.
Yeah.
And I think now the fact that Alt Marta appeared to herself, or like Marta appeared to herself, maybe they're just trying to put a bit of a. They're trying to put a bit of Michael Kahnwald into this character too, in that way. I think that sort of doesn't really need too much analysis. I think it's sort of just is nice, you know.
Yeah, it's just a cool thing that I noticed. But yeah, so to get back to the core of the scene, I think Alt Marta cutting her hair initially to me reads as her maybe taking the first steps, although she doesn't realize it, towards transitioning into the darker Alt Marta, if indeed she is going to become that darker Alt Marta, which I don't know. Seems unlikely, but given where she ends up in this.
What do you mean the darker? You mean Eva?
No. Well, yeah, like so the one who killed
the scarred one.
Yeah, the scarred, punished Alt Marta. But I mean, by the end of this scene, it's clear her loyalties still lie with Jonas, with the I promise someone I'd take care of something to Katarina. So I think this whole episode is a good and the last episode actually as well is a great sort of case for only the good dying young, because the nice versions of both of these characters just get mercilessly killed, and we're left with the real bastards by the end of it.
Yeah, actually, you said earlier that you think you alluded to the idea that maybe this inflection point affected Marta too. This is the question I have for you actually. Then is that, see this Marta cutting her hair? Is this after the inflection point, or is this before? You know what I mean? Like, is this Marta like definitely in no way going to end up being Eva, or is the inflection point going to come after this and maybe, you know what I mean?
I think it's already happened. I think it happened the first time someone crossed over the worlds. I don't know exactly how that, like what the kernel of that inflection point is, but I feel like it's the same. There's like such a commitment to mirroring Jonas and Marta's storylines that it would almost feel weird for them for the inflection point in both of their character arcs to not also mirror. So I think it's already happened. I don't know. I don't really know why it did it for Marta though, because obviously for Jonas it's does Marta show up or not?
Yeah,
I'm not sure what it was for Marta, but
I think you're onto something there, because the way I understood it watching this episode for the first time is like. And not just to say that my understanding the first time was correct, I'm just saying what I was thinking there was when Eva explains it later on about like the outside and the inside of the line going around, that would definitely imply to me that the inflection point for both happened at the same time, because they both cross over each other at the same time. Yeah,
I think that's where that's where that like my understanding of that theory kind of came from, or where it was cemented was like explicitly when Eva is like, here's your infinity symbol, I don't know, I'm a physicist, just trust me. And just before we move on actually as well, I just wanted to very quickly mention Katarina in this scene, because alt Katarina is really smart writing this. Her character talking about fate, and there's this like taking your life in your own hands, which is very kind of carefully constructed imagery that could potentially evoke images of, you know, someone bashing someone's head in with a rock in their hands and choosing your path, which, you know, it's all very evocative of what we saw in the previous episode with Prime Katarina. But this entire conversation, I think, almost serves as like an epitaph for Prime World Katarina. Like this character, obviously because she's the same person, has this also has this kind of like blunt, dogged refusal to accept that there are some things you can't control, which is ultimately probably a good personality trait, but it's what will ultimately get Katarina killed as well. So it's really nice sort of sign off for Katarina's character that we didn't get in the last episode, because obviously she met a very violent end.
Yeah. I think that's good. I think that I'm watching this episode thinking like, Katarina's going on about like, no, I don't think we are predetermined or whatever. So I'm just saying, Katarina, you need to have a wee word with this woman in about 60 years when she can explain it to you.
yeah, she's I think in terms of accepting the determinism of the time travel loop, Katarina is probably the last horse to cross the finish line. I don't think there's anyone we've met who has been less willing to accept how it works than her.
I don't even think whenever she died with her mother and all, I don't even think that she even thought she was in the 80s. So she was just in some VR headset.
She just thought she was in Marburg. Like she just like gone through the caves and turned up in Marburg. It's like they dress differently here, but never mind.
Yeah, that one looks like my mother. All right, okay, so next we get the scene which apparently puts some cards in the right place in the deck for you. That was
they drops into place, and I was like, okay, here we go.
It's all in place now for the faux magic trick. Dubious Mickle, but basically, Claudia was going to touch. Jesus, like what was she doing? Like
I don't normally criticize this show for things like this, but I find it slightly unbelievable that Claudia, a scientist's first instinct when she sees this glowing, radiating mass of raw power, her first instinct is to reach out and touch it. It's like, what are you doing? That's clearly not going to do good things to you. But I love the depiction of the God particle here. It's just this kind of, it's very different to how it's presented in 2052, where it seems a lot more unstable. This just feels like it feels almost like a I guess it looks like a bit like a neutron star or something. Like it's just this dense mass of energy that feels like as soon as someone does something to this, it's going to go wrong.
Yeah. Obviously, Claudia has to thank Jonas because Jonas interrupts her.
Yeah, don't call it a comeback. He was only dead for about half an hour.
Yeah. Exactly. He was only dead for about 5 minutes if you were binging it.
Yeah.
Basically, that actually also is a really good way to explain where he's been for the last 3 months, because we know this is 3 months after the apocalypse. He's been here working away at this,
beavering away.
I was like, because in my head when I found out about it, I was like, well, where the fuck is Jonas then? Because we've had 3 months, and it's something even like I forgot about it, like in between watches. You know what I mean? When I rewatched it, and and then I was like, hang on, is this a problem? Like, where has he been? And then it shows he's been working on this again. I'm like, oh yeah, that's where he's been. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I think it makes total sense, and it didn't. I'm trying to like figure out in my head whether the fact this doesn't bother me at all is just as a result of the really good writing that's gone before, because there is an alternate timeline, if you'll excuse the slightly hackneyed expression, where they do this and it feels really cheap because they've killed Jonas in the last episode and then half an hour later they brought him back. It feels like a superhero movie death, where characters are only dead for 10 minutes, but it doesn't feel like that here. And I think that is a testament to how well they have handled death in this show, that they have earned the right to bring characters back from the dead. Even like obviously it makes sense with the whole inflection point storyline that they're introducing. But I think the fact they can do this and it didn't bother me in the slightest is testimony to how well everything else has been written up to this point. And also the fucking balls on them to introduce this inflection point idea 2 episodes from the end of the series. It's like, what are you doing? What's happening in the next episode, guys? Are you just going to be like, oh, and also like there's heaven and hell, they exist as well, and we're going to get into the spirituality of this in the 1 episode we have remaining?
Well, we still have a Philosopher's Stone to see, so
oh yeah, I mean that's implicitly there though. I don't need them. That's like the Ulrich beating Helga's eye in storyline. I don't need to see that. We all know it's there, so we can just kind of
maybe the St. Christopher pendant is the Philosopher's Stone.
Maybe, yeah, it could be. It'll crack open, and a bunch of like white matter will come out of it, and it'll fix everything.
Yeah, I think we're sort of on there. But but yeah, like this show is, as you say, they keep introducing new stuff all the time, no matter how far in they are. Like they had a pilot episode on the 8th episode of the first season. They had a pilot episode on the first episode of the 3rd season. Like,
yeah, I feel like the writers' room for this show, when they got to the 3rd season, someone probably probably Jan Fries put this idea on the board, like episode 6, let's have this inflection point theory where there's 2 versions of each of our main characters, and the rest of the writers' room probably just laughed and were like, what is happening? Like, what are you doing? This goes against every rule in like of storytelling. You need to introduce this earlier so we have time to flesh it out before the end of the fucking season. No, we got this.
Yeah, we got this. We'll bring this
plane
into land.
Bring her into land. Yeah.
Okay.
This is them pulling that Yui, just like we're not gonna land there actually.
I like that. It almost feels a bit like they get to the end of writing episode 5. It's like old TV, where you don't start working on the next one until you finish the last.
Oh yeah. So you can see the audience reaction. They like got to the end of episode 5, and they're like, well, the audience didn't react that well to Jonas dying, so what if we just bring him back and introduce another Jonas? Like, you genius.
Yeah, so we were going to do this whole thing of like changing each cycle, but we thought, you know what? We'll just bring him back. Inflection points. But basically, like we've talked about a lot already, like Eva describing this inflection point with the infinity symbol, which I think was a really cool way of bringing in the infinity symbol in.
Yeah.
Also, in my mind, right, I don't know how you feel about this, but when I watched this the first time, I'm not going to tell you how I feel 100% now, but I don't know if it's changed too much, but I'm not going to tell you exactly how I feel now. But when I watched this, in my mind, I was like, okay, and I don't think I don't think I fully settled until a few months after watching it on this thought. I was putting a load of different ideas out on the internet, which I thought were cool, but I think I finally settled on the one that I think a few months after seeing it. But anyway, I think this kind of, in a way, you could argue that this implies that there is no changing between cycles. Okay? Because if there's an inflection point and they both go off in different directions, then they're sort of coming from the same cycle. And in my mind, I feel I kind of when I watched this, I kind of felt a bit, and I eventually did when I sort of finally got my head around it, felt like a bit like a fool for ever thinking that you could change cycles. Like I was like, hang on a minute, how could it be different? Because it has to. Basically, every Eva, every unknown, sorry Gary, the cleanup crew, every member of them, they're not different members. Like they are all the same character, just at different points. I don't know. How where are you on this at the minute?
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I am as well. I think because we now know that each world effectively has 2 permutations, depending on which part or which inflection of which course, I guess, of the cycle they're in. That basically covers a lot of the potential discrepancies between the timelines, particularly given, as I say, there are 2 episodes left. They're not going to show us everything that we haven't seen in the other routes that the other Jonas or the other Marta hasn't taken. We just have to assume that fills in the blanks. So yeah, I also keep going back to, or I used to, I haven't done it for a while. There's that moment in season 1 where Ulrich is pursuing Helga through the caves, and I guess he does it here actually in this episode as well in the old world. And he has the binary choice: he can either go left or he can go right. And if the show wasn't committed to this deterministic model of cycles and time travel, roughly 50% of the time he would pick wrong, and the entire timeline would be different.
Exactly.
And initially when I saw that, I was like, okay, this has to be purely deterministic, because otherwise it would completely fuck up the timeline every time he picked wrong. And then we started seeing things with the alt world and with the crossing over between them where things were different, and I was like, okay, how does that make sense? Because if it's purely deterministic, this doesn't work. Things have to be the same. But now we have this inflection point where the cycle will loop back on itself and essentially self-correct on each like of those courses. That makes perfect sense. So we're back to it being essentially purely deterministic now, which makes me very interested to see how this show is ending, because if determinism is to be believed, the end point of this loop, whatever that may be, was decided long ago.
Yeah, exactly. But I will also say that it's a bit strange, because in order for it to happen the way it happens, the idea of having multiple cycles now, like, if they were to break the cycle, right? You would ask yourself, well, then how did that happen? Because they always would have broken the cycle. Do you know what I mean? So it also brings into play the idea that this only happens once. Because time is a linear line. If you look at it like as in a line, and then they're the ones jumping back and forth through different times and dimensions. So the time is still moving on. So like the time only went once from like 1850 or 1800, let's say, through to 2050, 2060 or whatever it is, right? Just that whole time we're looking at. The time only happened once, and our characters were jumping up and forward. So if something happens that breaks the cycle, you could actually just make an argument that this whole thing only happened once. Now,
this whole thing took 66 years, essentially.
Exactly. Exactly. Or the 66 years of Jonas finding out to becoming Adam or whatever. Yeah. So I like that explanation, but also I find it interesting as well, because what's my thought I'm having right now? Because
confusion.
Yeah, I'm confused. I was going to say something there, but it's just gone. But yeah, like another thing I want to say is, Eva talking about this infinity symbol and like the outside of the line and the inside of the line. That, like, when you first hear about this, you talking about the inflection point of the alt Marte, then all of a sudden you're thinking 4 realities. You're thinking 1 reality for the alt, 2 realities for the alt world, 2 realities for the prime world. However, I would actually posit that from this explanation, we could say there's only 2 realities.
Oh yeah, I think there are. Yeah,
2 realities, and 1 reality is encompassing 1 version of the Alton Prime, and the other one is a different version of the Alton Prime.
Yeah, and I think it's not the 2 versions of Jonas, for example, aren't in different realities. It's the way she describes it; they just overlap on top of each other. So they'll never meet each other. I guess technically speaking, it's possible that one character could have a conversation with Jonas and then have a conversation with the other Jonas. If like. I wonder if that would work, like from a physics standpoint.
Well, it's not going to happen because that Jonas is dead. But I know
exactly.
but I know
it's not going to happen. But I think technically speaking, what they're positing is that would be possible because they're off doing different things. But yeah, I don't consider them to be separate realities now. I think they're it's the same reality, but they're kind of layered on top of each other, doing different things.
Yeah, and it just where you put it there, it makes perfect sense. And while it's crossing in the middle of that infinity symbol, that's when you're able to grab one Jonas and pull him out of his reality, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And you know. That's essentially, well, I guess actually I've said that I think the inflection point for Alt Marta has already happened. Maybe the inflection point for Marta was that moment where the moment in this episode where Magnus and Franziska go and grab her and they're just like, sorry, you're ours now. But
then what? Then if that happened, then there would have to be a way that she would be saved by Eva as well, because otherwise she'd just die of the apocalypse.
That's true. Yeah.
Or maybe in the other one she went with Bartos.
Yeah, just stayed on the bike.
No,
thank you, strangers.
You know how at the end how Bartos is saved by himself. Maybe she just went with the other.
That's a good point. Yeah, that is. Yeah, okay. So maybe that is the inflection point, and they are at slightly different times. I mean, they're what, like how long? How many days ago?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we don't know if they're at different times, do we? Because whenever Marta comes in, well, it's a different. That's the thing. That's the weird thing. And I'd love to
technically different times, but they're not actually different times.
The same point in time within the two. Yeah, that's really strange. Like the calendar of the two worlds is slightly different. And I wonder if that can be, if we would really look at the picture of the infinity symbol and look at where each line is overlapping. I wonder if we could actually see that there is a slight difference in the length between. Obviously, that's really crazy. But but the idea of like there being, because obviously there's like, what is it, like 11 months or like 10 months difference between the date in the alt world and the prime. Yeah, so
something like that.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll see.
So I mean, it's a super cool reveal, and it's just the balls on these guys.
Yeah, I think we've given it the correct weight that it should have had in our discussion here, because it is something we could have went inflection points, cool, let's move on, but we could also have a 5-hour discussion about it too, because it's such a cool, and like this is what I was saying to you in the last episode too. I was saying, like, when I was watching it, I was like, I have more faith in these writers that they'll give us something that we can explain away a lot of plot holes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Like, I mean, they have earned that credibility though. Like this is the result of years, I guess, of consistently really good writing on this show.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we then get a scene of Claudia and Jonas in the bunker, and Claudia is basically saying the particles or whatever has changed in the tunnel. So next time it'll work. And he's like, I can't wait 33 years.
Yeah. To be honest, this is one of those moments where I was like, yeah, okay, science. I'm just going to accept what you're saying at face value, Claudia, and not question it. And to be honest, I trust her. I don't believe she's lying to Jonas when she says this. When specifically when she says that she has found a way to save everyone, Marta included. I know she has been told by her alt self to manipulate Jonas. I didn't get the sense that that's what she's doing here. Okay. But I do get the impression she doesn't trust him, or she is fearful of him because she knows what he will become.
Yeah.
But I think Claudia,
does she know who he'll become at this stage? I suppose he's probably. I think he told her about Adam whenever.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I can't honestly remember a moment where it was confirmed, but the way her performance to me implies she sees something in him that at least strongly suggests that she knows what he's going to turn into.
Yeah, exactly. Like this Claudia is greeting this Jonas in a very different way than old Claudia did in episode 6 of season 2, where she said, "I've waited a long time," like because he was very innocent then.
Yeah.
Okay, so. Old Marta finally gets to Bartos and is like, right, Bartos, let's do it. Let's get your dad on the phone. He's going to cause the apocalypse. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, Alexander is on his moral trip, and he's like, no, I've got to sort this out, and he doesn't answer the phone to him.
So is that well? Actually, like just before we get into this, I just wanted to mention there's that letter writing scene between the Martyrs in the Eric Lux HQ. So that just happened like before this briefly, and that confirmed to me that A, those letters are horseshit, and B, it kind of confirmed the Clausen theory because Stranger Marta is holding additional letters that the younger Marta has written. So yeah, I mean, it's not fully confirmed, but I was very pleased to see that.
What was the Clausen theory?
That the letter he got with the I can't remember what the monologue
was written by Marta, basically.
Yeah, a man will give himself away when he's lying. That whole monologue and like go to Vinden to find your brother. That was written by Alt Marta as well. Which I think in my mind, a lot of the fandom have concluded that it was the Unknown that wrote that letter, based on the fact that they quote Freud. Having said that, if the Unknown wrote it, I think that's pretty much a confirmation that Eva wanted it written. So it's basically the same thing. And I think it's the same handwriting. That was my main thing. Yeah. Is it like the? But yeah. So to talk about
well, if the Unknown knows Freud quotes, it might be because Eva knows Freud quotes.
Yeah, maybe they're all just big fans of Freud.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Marta Bartos stuff here is interesting because this is, I think, getting Bartos ready to do something significant in terms of the time travel, which we'll come back to in a little bit.
It's time to shine, finally.
So the Alexander, maybe you can explain this to me. The Alexander Charlotte thing, I don't fully understand what his plan is here. Like, is he trying to just do the right thing?
I think he's just decided in his life that I'm going to come clean on everything.
Okay, fine. Because I was trying to figure it out. Because obviously Hannah had asked him to destroy Charlotte, and I wasn't sure if he was like, hey, come on in, open these barrels and get zapped, you moron.
In his mind, he has nothing to lose because he doesn't have Regina anymore.
Yeah, okay.
High praise of Bartos, I'm sure. But basically, in the Prime world, he fought to the bitter end because he still had Regina to care for, and he couldn't lose his fortune. He couldn't go to jail. He needed to care for her. Whereas now he's got nothing to lose. He's like, well, I've cleansed my soul, telling my son about my past life.
Yeah.
Basically, when he was confronted with Hannah trying to blackmail him, he went the complete opposite direction that he did in the Prime.
Okay. Yeah. I for some reason that didn't click for me that's what he was doing in this, but that makes a lot more sense. Like, there's a couple of things in this episode where I was like, it doesn't make that much sense to me what he's doing.
It did focus on the bag when he was about
that's kind of that's kind of the thing that confused me. Was it felt like he and it kind of did the like low angle, almost intimidating shot, which obviously is in retrospect was probably just a red herring. But to be
like, been a lot of red herrings with Alexander.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, but not Yasin. That's the one that we can always cling to.
What about the number plate? the license plate, the car license plate.
I've forgotten that.
Yeah, well, it still could come true.
It could. I mean, we've got plenty of time. Of time. They're throwing all sorts of shit into this series, like with 2 episodes left. So wait for the number plate to come back. But yeah, so that I'm glad to clear that up because I didn't initially get his motivation from that. But I think that's just me misreading it. The other one in the scene after this, the Ulrich and Helga stuff. So he seems to realize again here that this is his brother. But I was convinced that he already had accepted that, based on him like crying during the mission briefing when they're talking about finding the boy's body.
No, I honestly think that he just thought that this was some sick psycho killer who had taken the stuff off his brother in the 80s and put it onto this new boy.
Oh, okay. I see. Yeah, so I didn't get that either. So when he was crying during the mission briefing back in episode 2 or whatever it was, I was like, oh, okay, so he knows it's Mads.
I think it was confirmation that his brother was dead. I think that's why he was doing it, and all this stuff. Like we've talked a lot before about not accepting the time travel that's right in front of your eyes because it's just not possible in your mind. I think that he didn't fully put it together until this point.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. It just confused me a bit because I was like, wait, hold on, you didn't realize this was Mads? It's obviously Mads. But then I guess, if we look at Ulrich's arc in the first season, this is following exactly the same path.
Also, this Mads body looks a little less like a real boy than a little bit Pinocchio-ish. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Maybe I'm trying to think if it's the same. It must be the same body. They must have just used the same.
I think it's probably the same actor because this one actually looks a little bit like it's a bit like Mikkel. It's a little bit longer, a little stretchier,
a little bit taller. It had a beard,
a little bit taller. But we talked about it before. Like the old world does everything different. So Mikkel could have been born a year earlier. Same with Mads. So
that's it. We don't have to worry about these kind of things. Just like.
Just brush on by. That's why they haven't showed Yasin in this world because he's actually 6'5" now.
Yeah, unfortunately he's had a growth spurt and he now looks like a rugby player.
There's no way that we would ever believe that he would turn into Alexander anymore, so that they haven't showed it to him.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Now we move on to the trio, the cleanup crew, Gary cubed, is going through the dark matter machine. At this point, did you sort of know where they were going? Did you put that together?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen them with the keys, so I assumed that they were going to the power plant in the different worlds to potentially, ball something up. I'm not exactly sure what they're ballsing up, but it doesn't end well. So yeah, and presumably to die as well, which lends some credibility to my theory that the picture of the body in 2020 actually was the member of CUC. Because
that doesn't make any sense. But based on our whole discussion this episode about it's all happened once, the younger one has to grow to the older one. Like, what do you?
But I don't know. Because like the 2020 has already happened, like at the point that they're causing this accident, right?
There's no, but they're not. Yeah, but they're not at the same time. The meltdown happened in '86.
They're in '86, aren't they? Mm.
Like, you remember as well when they were talking about when Burnt was talking about the meltdown as well in '86, the first season. He didn't mention anyone dying. Like, it wasn't an explosion. It was a meltdown that produced all this stuff.
All the cesium. Yeah, I mean, that is a good point. That he looks like identical to that body, and the fact it's in shot makes me think like it's either a really weird Easter egg or
I got to see this picture because you got to let this go.
I'm telling you,
he's like the old one exists. The old one. We're getting to the end now, Conrad. I'm ripping the Band-Aid off here. The old one exists, Conrad.
Liz, all right, put the picture on screen next to the picture of the boy, and like let the people decide. Because I'm telling you, that's the same actor. He's in
all
that
right.
picture.
Well, maybe there's an inflection point with the unknown.
Maybe everyone's got an inflection point, and it's less an infinity symbol and more just a bunch of beans next to each other in a row.
They talk about it being a knot. So basically, it's every single character has this weird.
Yeah, it's like what are those things called? They're like the little things that you draw in a circle, and it goes round and creates like a crazy sort of circular diagram. I can't remember what they're called. It's not kaleidoscopic.
Oh yeah, I can't remember. I know what you mean though. I know what you mean.
That's really going to annoy me, but
yeah, it's really cool.
Oh, spirograph. My partner just told me they were called spirograph. There we go. So.
Oh, spirograph. There we go. Okay, there we go. So that makes sense to me. I would say, I would say that picture. I'm gonna have a look at it now. And I bet you
put it on the screen. Let the people decide, you coward.
No, I'm not. I will put it on the screen. I'm not letting the people decide because let's remember. Conrad didn't think the older Ulrich was a good lookalike for the young one. That's all we'll say.
He looks like a hippie.
Conrad doesn't have a good sense of people looking the same.
A good eye.
Let's just say that. That's been established.
Put it on the screen. The people will pick the right side.
It took him far too long to see that Alexander was Yasin after all. So far too long. Right. Okay. So next we get a scene where the future girl basically does a Claudia. Show it to me.
Yeah, it's interesting that they don't just kill. I mean, well, actually, we find out by the end of this episode why they don't just kill her. But it gets you thinking. The fact they don't just shoot Marta at this point, it gets you thinking about where this character is going, and it's giving this at this point unnamed scarred girl a lot of screen time, which stood out to me because it's like. Okay, like you've not had that much to do up until this point, and you're being featured a lot in this, so something important feels like it might happen with you. Yeah,
she's snowballing a bit, this character. Like, it was very drip fed at the beginning. I don't know why. I've always been drawn to this character though. I always liked this character, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's.
I mean, she's like 13 and she knows how to use an assault rifle, which is pretty cool.
I don't know if she's 13. Like,
maybe she's a bit older than that.
She's like 17. Yeah, but yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, she's not 17.
Yes, she is. I think she's the same age as our general group of teenagers.
You think?
Yeah.
She's pretty short. I don't know. I would put her at like 13, 14.
As I said, that's more proof to Conrad not being able to tell the difference.
I mean, to be honest, like, you work with children and young adults, I guess. Whereas, like, if you showed me that now I'm in my 30s, basically anyone between the ages of 10 and 20, I was like, I don't know how old you are.
Like a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
That's why you don't work at Tesco. You'd give them all alcohol, no matter what age.
You look old enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, the head doesn't come past the counter.
hello, sir. Like they don't even need to be in like the two kids on top of each other in a trench coat. They don't even need to do that for you.
No. As long as they wear like a trilby, wear an adult hat, and I'm sold.
Little girl walking up with a Peppa Pig t-shirt on. And you're like,
and a trilby.
Yeah,
like...
just the one bottle of vodka, miss. All right, okay. So now Magnus and Francisca are getting sent through the portal.
Yep. Nice little match cut of them holding hands.
Yep, exactly. So we match cut into them also sitting by the lake. Back where their romance started, when Magnus ran into the lake.
Yeah, to save her, and then
Francisca
ran away.
Francisca was doing her best imitation of a dead body.
Yeah. It's a nice little scene, this, though. I think the way I've got her name down here, Gina Stibitz, I think, is the name of the actress who plays Francisca. The way she plays this really sells to me that she actually means it when she's talking about, if they're going to die today, then it's fine so long as they die together. Mm-hmm. And I know it is the kind of melodramatic dialogue you expect of teenagers, like the kind of thing teenagers say to each other when they're in love and they don't actually believe that death is a possibility. But there's an earnestness to her performance that I really responded to, I think. And I think the scene really, really perfectly encapsulates their romance as well. It's just two people who passionately love and committed to one another, and no matter what happens to them, they won't be separated. So we see, one reality where they're kind of roped into this really horrible time war, and in the other they just die together. But in both, they can rely at least upon each other.
Yeah, they've been together the whole time.
Yeah.
I will say it's not going to be in What the Dub today, but there's a moment here whenever Magnus is signing. And you know how people who can speak when they're signing, they kind of say the words along. But
yeah.
It was just funny in the dub. It's just like the guy was just like, yeah, together. It was just I don't know why it just took me out of it completely. It's like because the whisper was too clear,
Yeah, it's but it probably doesn't. Well, I mean, I guess I've never really thought about that. But how do they get like external dialogue recorded when they're dubbing it? Do they just try and like ADR in the? Well, I mean, obviously it's ADR'd, but do they try and just put in the sort of ambient noise of a forest as well?
No. I think the way that it's done is that they actually get the editing file.
I guess they have the audio track.
They have the audio track,
yeah.
And it's all the different tracks. So then they're able just to replace the voice, so it's still the same.
Okay, but it's still, even with that, it cuts through and sounds way too clean.
Yeah, exactly. It's way too clean. Like, because obviously he's standing in a room. He's not actually out in the forest. He's just like together.
So on top of the voice acting and translation being bad, the audio mixing is also bad on the dub.
Yeah, I had to listen to it a few times because I was like, have they got him just whispering, or have they got him standing across the room, to try and get it soft? Anyway, okay, so then we come to the point I was mentioning at the beginning of the podcast, where Marta is on the back of Bartos's bike. Looks really stupid, but it's so realistic to me. Like, we've only got one bike. That's what we're gonna do. She's sitting on the seat and he's standing up pedaling.
I've never done this because I don't trust myself to not completely wipe out. But I've known it done.
Oh well, yeah. I would have done this growing up, but also if you were very lucky growing up, you would have actually had the stunt pegs.
Oh yeah, you had a BMX with the stunt pegs on the back.
Yeah, and then someone could just stand on the pegs.
Give someone a backy. Yeah.
A backy. So this is where I was talking about, right? Because you were talking about doing a Yui earlier.
Yeah.
In Australia, now we've got a few Australian listeners I know, so maybe they could tell me in the comments whether it's still called this or whether it was just a local thing. Because I was from basically a suburb outside Melbourne. Haven't lived there for a long time, so probably I could say I'm from Narre Warren, which is near kind of near Cranbourne, kind of near Dandenong. So if anyone's from the Melbourne area, that's where I'm from.
Those don't sound like real place names.
Yeah, well, I was always told. Actually, you could also confirm this. I was always told that Narre Warren was like Aboriginal for dirty water. That's what I.
Oh,
thought.
Nice.
But that sounds like something you would say about your town. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Dirty water. It's actually Aboriginal for the worst fucking place in the world.
That's a very Australian thing to name somewhere. Though.
It's actually Aboriginal for devil's butthole. Yeah, like these are all real things. But basically, what we used to call it was giving people a dink.
A dink?
A dink, yeah. Give me a dink.
Never heard.
Give me a dink, will you? Give me a dink. So
no,
either on the pegs or on the seat, it's called a dink. Also, there's another thing we would have done is if we had like a big mountain bike, or like I suppose it's actually more of a road bike with the straight bar across. Another way you could give someone a dink, and this didn't work after a certain age, but you could just get them to sit on the bar.
Oh yeah, that's you're asking for trouble if you do that. Frankly,
yeah.
It's completely unsecured, and you also can't steer. So, like you're absolutely setting yourself up for disaster with that. But yeah, I've never heard giving someone a dink, but we called it giving someone a backy in my neck of the woods.
Yeah, I prefer dink. Right, okay.
Dink is shorter, certainly. It cuts to the brevity is the soul of wit, and that cuts right to the heart of the issue.
Yeah, exactly. Right, okay. So they're off somewhere. We'll come back to them in a minute. We have Ulrich making the call again to Charlotte.
Yep. By the way, while all this is happening, it's really this is almost like a mini montage, this section, because it's all tied together by the CUC's theme, which is really cool. Like you don't normally get. I'm trying to think if we've seen that before, really, but get a character's theme overplaying or playing over rather like action from other characters, but it very much sort of encapsulates this feeling that
they're setting everything in motion, sort of thing.
Yeah, the characters are basically getting in position for the Big Bang. Like these characters are all operating under the kind of auspices of the cleanup crew who are about to balls everything up. And yeah, like we get to see the lovely pink hazmat suits at the Alt power plant, which it feels like an interesting choice.
I would have called them red.
Yeah, they're pinkish, magenta maybe. Like there's a pink quality to them.
I'll give it to them.
I mean, it's not a color that I would have immediately thought a hazmat suit is, but I guess their purpose is to be bright. So maybe like a sort of pinkish red or like lime green would work as well as a yellow. Yeah. But yeah, we get Ulrich following Helga, Magnus and Franziska turning up to talk to Alt Marta and Bartos. Yeah, a lot of stuff in this sort of mini montage.
Yeah, okay, so sort of Franziska and Magnus show up. I think in a previous scene as well, we've also had... Oh, not yet, actually, but basically Adam will go on to say that he sent all of the people out to where they need to be.
Yeah.
And we'll touch on that in more detail in terms of certain things, like a certain character's name later on. But but like he's doing that. And then straight after, we see Magnus and Franziska sort of getting in their position, and they take Marta. We then see Eva with her soldiers.
Yeah, they're all sending the boys out.
Yeah, so they're all sending the boys out. So do you have anything to say about the Magnus and Franziska scene where they take Marta before we move on to Eva's pieces?
Just that it's yet another example of the good versions of Jonas and Marta being subjected to so much dishonesty. So they basically say to her that she can prevent the apocalypse in both worlds if she chooses them, which obviously isn't true. Like it's the complete opposite of what's going to happen, and you can easily see how that she could potentially be radicalized. I mean, obviously she's not going to be based on what happens during this episode, but someone like this could easily be radicalized into joining Eva, given the scale of the lies that she is being told. And this works as a kind of reflection of Jonas, or as a reflection for Jonas as well, because these people are just constantly being lied to, and the scale of the lies are constantly getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so it's like, we're going to cause the apocalypse, and then the other side says, no, they're going to cause we're going to cause the apocalypse. And it's just this constant stream of dishonesty, and you can totally understand why they'd get to the point where they'd be like, no, I'm just going to follow myself. I don't trust anyone else.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And I find that really interesting. Like, there's certain characters. Now, obviously, it's interesting because we also see those characters after that innocent, sort of vulnerable stage. Yeah. And now with this new inflection point thing, it brings more into the discussion in terms of, is this the one that actually will go down that dark path? So it actually, even though it sort of implies there's not really any free will, it's all predetermined, it also gives you the conversation of, but is it the right one? So it actually brings in a little bit of those free will conversations, even though there isn't really free will. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Eva's soldiers. So what I've done is I thought we'll go through them one at a time.
Yeah, because obviously I've got them all down.
Yeah. So what Eva does is she sends them out to do stuff, but then in the montage we actually see each of them doing their thing. So
yes,
we'll do that now, and then we'll maybe come back to the Adam talking to Marta scene. Is that all right?
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, obviously she talks to her couple of selves first. I'm just going to do it in the order that the montage gives it to us. So old Noah, or middle Noah, goes and gets Elizabeth. So and then obviously takes Elizabeth to the bunker.
Yeah.
What did you think about this? First of all, we'll focus on the Noahs first.
Okay, so do you want me to talk about what she actually says to them?
Yeah, that'll be cool. I didn't
Okay.
take a note of that because I thought you would.
Yeah, so Noah, she says, you bring love to make everything new, which to me seems like a pretty straightforward instruction. She's basically saying, get yourself together with our Ellie girl, and let's get...
It also is a good implication that actually they do truly have love for each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think they do. I think the show has pretty clearly shown us that, even if there's a guiding hand that's kind of pushing them together. So yeah, I think his instruction is pretty straightforward. Like get yourself together with this young Ellie to make everything new. Not 100% sure I understand that.
You have to remember as well, though, that this young Noah is going to be being manipulated by Eva, just like Noah was by Adam, because young Noah never, even in the Prime world, doesn't seem to really have been told everything by old Noah yet.
Yeah. He doesn't grasp kind of the scale of what he's doing, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so next up, we'll go to Stranger Alt Marta. So she goes to 1888 and replaces the letter.
Yeah, and I actually can't remember what she...
Also the watch.
Yeah, I can't remember what she actually says to herself. I didn't write that down. But the fact she goes to 1888, replaces the letter, and I have a theory cooking away about her ending up as the mother of one of the Tannhauses, makes me think maybe Stranger Marta is hanging out in either this timeline or an earlier timeline for a little while.
Interesting, okay. We also have Bartos saving himself, and this is actually finally, this is the first time we get the confirmation of the Bartos theory.
Yeah, we all knew it. Come on.
Yeah.
Like, it was so fucking obvious.
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't, this show could have gotten to the end and we'd not had this confirmation. I would have gone to my grave being like, that is 100% Bartos. Like, there's no way that's another character. But yeah, okay, so I'm gonna posit something here.
Oh, okay.
So Bartos's mission is his instructions are save yourself to save us. So the saving yourself is obviously him turning up in the alt world, or him turning up in 2019 in the alt world to lift himself out of there and take himself away from the apocalypse.
Yeah.
To save us, I wonder if he's going to try and break Alt Marta out of Adam's clutches. And there's a reason that I think that when we get to Egon.
Okay.
So let's go to Egon.
Okay, let's go to Egon. Here he is. But first I will say, how good is it to have old Egon back?
Oh, great to see him. And beardless as well. He's cleaned himself up.
Just his I don't know, what would you say? His presence here in this sort of group 100% explains the difference in Alt Claudia.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because it's just like, okay, the Tiedemann clan are on board with this from an early age, and Claudia was indoctrinated, never strayed, never like developed that sort of independent streak that she did in the Prime world, and that's why she's on board. Okay, so Egon, I'm going to jump around a bit here, so I apologize if this gets structurally weird, but his instruction is you must create your past to preserve your family tree. So presumably the affair with Hannah and the loss of his wife, I guess, is kind of what they're talking about there. But he turns up later in this episode while Hannah looks like she is having what looks like a miscarriage, or potentially
Listen, I've had 2 kids. If you're that late on and you're having that much blood, that's a miscarriage.
Yeah. Well, so, okay, possibly the case. Like, so...
we've talked before about, like, this is a TV show. They show us certain things to make us think certain things. There's no way they don't want us to think or know she's having a miscarriage. That baby in her belly was the biggest red herring of the series, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay.
I think like, come on, like, how much blood's coming out? Like, that's not what happens when you start giving birth.
I mean, that's definitely true. But I think, see, I went the other way with this. I was like, all right, we've done this dance before, Doug. You thought
they were doubling down?
I thought they were. Yeah, I was like, you're saying that this is a miscarriage. I think she's having that baby and she's dying in childbirth. Like, I think I think they're going the other way with it, because the fact that Egon turns up, and it is admittedly it's sight unseen. I just saw a woman bleeding that much from her uterus.
Well, that's what I assumed. I'm going to be honest with you.
I mean, it's a fair assumption. Like I say, if the show just depicted a woman bleeding that much from her womb while pregnant, I'd be like, okay, that's a miscarriage. But because of this show, and because we see Egon showing up with the instruction to preserve his family tree, to me implies that Hannah's baby is getting with someone related to Egon. Because otherwise, what relevance could there be for him? Like.
Okay. So again, we're coming to the end of the series now. I'm going to say something here that you maybe have realized, but I don't. Basically, Prime Hannah being pregnant with Egon's baby. So I read this the first time I watched it, and I think I still believe this, to be honest with you, is that Egon's taking Hannah back to the 50s, so she gets with Egon and still gets pregnant with the same baby as she did in the Prime world.
Yeah, so I don't read it that way. I think she is already pregnant in this world.
But that means that the baby has different parents.
It does. But I mean, there are some people there are some family trees which are slightly different between the worlds, though.
Okay, so it all implies but yeah, you're exactly right. Except basically what I was assuming at that time is that the baby that Hannah has in the I was still believing that baby in the Prime world was going to be important to the family tree in general. Yeah. So that's what I was assuming. So that baby also needs to exist in the alt world.
Yeah. So I mean, I do agree with that. I think that's the case. My assumption is that
there's going to be two babies though.
Well, there's going to be one in the Prime world and one in the alt world.
The baby she's currently got in her belly.
Oh yeah, no.
You think that's going to be born, and then you think there's going to be another one with Egon in the 50s.
I don't know if I think she's going to have one with the 50s. I think the important thing is just that she has a baby. That's my read of it.
So your read is that no matter what baby comes out in either world, that baby is not going to end up being the parent of someone.
What is in? Wait, sorry. Say that again.
So your read is that the baby that comes out in either world isn't going to end up being the parent of someone, because if
I think it will. I think
it'll be the parent of, because it won't have the same DNA, because it'll be different fathers. So your idea is that the person, but we've sort of been led to believe that the only difference in the worlds is Jonas. So you think that baby's going to have something to do with Jonas's birth?
I think it'll be someone else. I mean, basically, like. The Egon involvement with Hannah here makes me think that it's getting with someone who's related to Egon, like that child. So I guess maybe you are right, and she could have a miscarriage here and then go back to the 50s and have another baby with young Egon. That could totally make sense. To be honest, whether she has the baby here or she goes back to the 50s and has a baby doesn't actually make too much of a difference to the theory I have, because the fact that Egon is here preserving Hannah's life and kind of trying to preserve either through the baby she's having now or the baby she will have in the 50s, preserve that pregnancy, kind of confirms this theory. But essentially when I kind of came to that conclusion, I started working through the family tree and being like, okay, which of the Tiedemanns or the people kind of related to the Tiedemanns is that baby going to get with in order to preserve this family tree? So I went through and I was like, okay, we don't know Egon's parents, so it's kind of unlikely to be them. Yeah. I guess it could be, but come on, introducing Egon's parents 2 episodes left is gonna be a bit much. Alexander doesn't really seem that interested in romance anymore, so I'd be really surprised if they futzed with a timeline to get Alexander to have a baby with this character. Regina's dead. Okay. Claudia's too old.
Yeah,
which makes me think. And given I've said Bartos is I think he's going to 2052 to try and save Alt Marta. It makes me think maybe Bartos is going to end up so he's involved in the time travel stuff. Yeah. Maybe Bartos is getting with this child at some point. I don't know when.
I like that theory. Yeah, that's a good theory.
Yeah, I don't know when it's going to happen, but that's
Are you implying then that even if the idea that these two babies are different in each world, do you think that both Bartoses will get with both babies? So say they're both girls and they're both different because they have different dads. You think Bartos will get with both of them still? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. I think
there's a theory there that doesn't doesn't hinge on the different babies thing as well. I think the Bartos getting with the baby is a good thing.
Yeah, that's kind of why that's not like the core of that theory, because I think either Hannah has the baby here, or she goes back to or she has a miscarriage and goes back to the 50s and has a baby there. I think the important thing for Egon and the instruction that he is following is Hannah needs to have a baby, and that baby needs to grow up to be with Bartos in order to have another baby. I'm trying to get it clear in my head who I think
in order to have another baby, though, that would imply. Like, to me, it would still imply like the mirroring of the universes, you know. Like if your theory is then going to lead on to a different theory where they have a baby that's someone, then both babies in both worlds have to be the same.
That is true. Yeah. So I guess maybe she does have a miscarriage here, and she has her baby in the.
That's what I assumed when I saw this. To be honest with you, when I saw the blood, I know what you mean. Like the whole idea of like
it's
like a literal red herring. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was my first thought too. But then it's Dark's fault. It's not my fault. Don't blame me for this.
No. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to judge you.
We've been down this road before, Dark.
The way you craft theories has changed so much over because you're trying to now predict what they'll do.
Yeah, I'm basically like trying to spot the red herrings coming, being like, "Oh, you're not gonna get me this time."
when I saw that for the first time, and she was bleeding, I was like, "Oh my god!" The whole time, this whole series, I've been thinking to myself, "Who the hell is that baby?" And then in my head, I'm like, "They just killed the baby." Like,
So I mean, I guess if I take a step back and think about it, I could go the entire opposite way with this theory and be like, "Well, she lost the baby in." 2019, which implies maybe she just loses the baby in Prime 2050 and that's the end of it, and the whole baby storyline is a complete red herring. But I feel
Egon's instruction here
Egon's involvement kind of implies that baby's important. I think it's going to get with Bartos, and I think Bartos and this child are going to have a baby themselves. I can't get clear in my head who I think that's going to be, but it's going to be someone.
Very, very interesting. I will also say just at this point, after we finish episode 7, we're going to do a special sort of Friday episode because we're just down to Monday episodes now because of our best movie podcast ever. But we're going to do a special Friday episode where we sort of do a retrospective and just really culminate all of Conrad's theories before the finale. And one thing we're going to do, because at that point I think I can do it, we're going to have a look at the whole family tree on Eva's floor. So that's what we're going to do.
Okay.
So between episode 7 and 8, we're going to have a look at that and talk fully through that at that point. Okay?
Yeah, that sounds cool.
All right. Okay. So next, we have have we talked about all of the different minions?
We haven't done Claudia.
Yeah. So Claudia, we've already seen that, haven't we?
Yeah. I mean, hers is just you must guide yourself to be our eyes and ears in Adam's world, which had me shaking my fist and being like, I told you not to trust her. So
don't trust her.
Hashtag don't trust that Claudia. Not that one.
Also, there's a symbolic sort of stylistic thing happening in this as well. The whole montage is sort of punctuated by this split screen of both worlds with the older and younger Gary and the middle Gary going about their business in the power plant in what I assume is 86 in both worlds.
Yeah, I think it is. It looks like 86 to me with how the bus stop is presented.
Yeah, that's when the big meltdown happened as well. So it sort of makes sense. But so that's what I really enjoyed that sort of stylistic choice they made there, where everything was mirrored. Yeah.
It's a really cool. Again, it goes back to. I mean, the CUC theme kind of fades out at this point, like when we're doing the Eric Lux and Sigmundus Assemble. But it's very cool having that. It's almost like their plot is a framing device for the rest of the plot.
This montage, to me, to be honest with you, this really felt like on the same level in terms of storytelling and everything as the season finale montages from previous seasons.
Yeah.
This was like a big culminating montage to me. Okay, so let's go back then to the Adam and Marta discussion. So what do you have to say about this?
Celia, huh? Who's that?
That's a name we haven't heard before. He lists out all the people who've went away to do their thing, and one of the people he mentions is Celia. So who's that?
Well, I think she's. I mean, the fact that he says Celia and Agnes in a stretch of dialogue where he's talking about people being related to each other. So I think he says Francisca and Charlotte. I can't remember actually the other names he says, but he's basically listing couplets of people who are related to each other.
Yeah.
And he says Celia and Agnes, which to me is like, okay, so those guys are related to each other.
Okay.
I mean, I have some kind of loose thoughts about this character purely, and to be honest, this is just me slotting pegs into, you know, when you get to a point in a jigsaw puzzle where you don't really know what goes in a part, but you're just like moving pieces like that one, that one, that one.
Because
that's
you only got
kind of
a few to choose from.
Yeah, exactly. Like this, that's kind of what I'm doing with this character at the moment. It's like, okay, we've just seen a scene where, this might be before that scene, but either way, they're very close to each other. A scene where Hannah's child is implied to be important to the Tiedemann family line.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get a scene with a previously unnamed character now being named, a previously unnamed female character of about the same age as young Bartos being named. I'm like, okay, is something happening here, guys?
Right. So
what's going on with this
character? Is this a theory?
I mean, I guess it is. It's kind of a very loose theory because I haven't got anything to base it on, but apart from the fact that structurally, it seems like they're pointing you at this character.
And do we know Celia yet? Like,
no. I mean, we don't know anything about her. That's kind of why it stood out to me that like we get her name. We've obviously seen her around, but we know we effectively, the only things we know about her is that she's probably...
No, hang on. You keep saying we've seen her around. You know, this is maybe one of those obvious things for the...
Oh, okay. So Celia is the girl with the scar on her face, I assume.
Okay. That's what I was waiting for you to say. That's
Sorry,
the theory. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one theory, is that Celia is the girl with the scar on her face, because I feel like it has to be. There's no one else in 2052.
Is there any other females who we don't know the name of? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And to give us this name and to sort of bring this character to the foreground in shortly after we see the implication that the Tiedemann family line will hinge on the baby that Hannah will presumably give birth to either now or in the 50s. After our discussion, it's probably going to be in the 50s. Makes me think that maybe she grows up to be this girl.
Who grows up to be that? Oh, that child.
Hannah's baby with Egon maybe grows up to be this girl.
Okay. Interesting. That's very interesting to me, because it then also shits upon the whole discussion we had 5 minutes ago about possibly the children being different. Because if Alt Egon is going to Alt Hannah to preserve the timeline, then surely they have to have the same child. Yeah,
I mean, I think like after that discussion, I'm like, okay, maybe she doesn't have that baby that she has in 2019.
Well, you had no theories on that anyway. Like, so.
No, it was just like I mean, it's still just like loosely. I think Hannah is having a baby, and if it's the one with Egon, that probably makes more sense because it mirrors across both worlds then. And I think that baby is going to grow up to become Celia, and then I think Celia and Bartos are going to get together, and I think maybe we'll see that next episode, because I that's kind of why I thought maybe Bartos is going to 2052 to try and save Alt Marta, because he's then going to come across Celia there, and there's going to be some Adam fuckery where it's like, I've been waiting for you, Bartos, and then he sends them off to the.
That's interesting.
Sends them off to the 20s.
So that would imply that the Alt Bartos gets with the Prime Celia.
Yeah, I guess it would actually, which implies the opposite also happens.
Yeah.
I hadn't really thought about that. But yeah.
That's interesting. Also, I will just draw you back. Didn't you have a theory? I don't know if you actually put it in the Matrix, but you had a theory from earlier in the season. Before Agnes went through the portal, she was hugging that future girl. So you had a theory that they were related in some way.
Yeah. I don't know how that works.
You already had that theory already.
I still think they are, because like maybe she's Agnes. It would be so typical of Dark if Agnes was her daughter. That would be so fucking typical of this show to be like, oh yeah, see this old woman and this young girl, it's mother and daughter, but not the way you're thinking.
But if that's the case, then who else would be a child of that character?
I'm trying to think now. Oh shit! That would be. Okay, that's interesting.
Interesting, eh?
Old Monsieur Tauber.
If that's where your theory's going, that's.
I hadn't even thought about that.
I mean, that's a big theory.
That makes their relationship. That makes their relationship of Bartos and Father Tauber. Really. Where the hell do you get that name from? If that's I don't know. That's a weird name. That kind of balls my theory up a bit, actually, with the name Hanno Tauber, because that's not.
Yeah.
I guess like Agnes's dialogue has implied that she just picked the name Agnes Nielsen because that's what she needed to have.
I'm really stretching out on a limb here, but I just think I want to hear you laugh about it. But Hanno, I'm sort of, the audience might be annoyed at me for this, but I'm sort of leading you down a particular path.
Okay.
The name Hanno is very similar to another name in the show.
Yeah, that is true. What, as in Hannah?
Yeah, and if your sort of theory you're crafting right now is the case, wouldn't that make Hannah Hanno's grandmother? So maybe Hanno was named after Hannah?
Yeah, that's a good point. That is, I was more thinking of the Tauber, to be honest. But yeah, that is a good point.
I know the Tauber doesn't really make much sense for this, but I mean, that's when I was at this stage, and once I heard the name Hanno, and I was starting to put things together in my head, I honestly was thinking to myself, I was like, Hanno, Hannah, there must be some sort of connection here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that is a good point. They are similar to each other. I've been burned with this before with the whole Boris Niewald thing, where it's just like Nielsen and Carnwald.
Yeah, no. That could still come true.
Okay, so I'm gonna commit that down though. I'm gonna say so. Hannah's having Celia. I'm scratching the baby off from 2019. That one's a lost cause. Get rid of that one. We don't care about that baby.
That could be Peter Doppler.
Maybe. Oh, poor Peter. What happens to him in 2019? And alt 2019 just gets blown up, I guess.
Yeah, I think Peter's sort of in a similar boat to Boris at this stage in the story, in that it was like really, really laced with red herrings that he was going to be someone.
Yeah, he's going to be the Noah. It's like, no, he's just a priest.
yeah.
But yeah, okay. So Hannah's going to have Celia. I need to get this straight in my head now. Hannah's going to have Celia with Egon. We'll have to do a Vincest on this if this turns out to be right. Jesus Christ.
Well, basically that whole retrospective episode will basically be a Vincest episode. That whole thing.
Yeah, and then Celia gets with Bartos. Bartos and Celia will then have Agnes and Noah.
Yeah.
Which then means that means that Bartos and Jonas and Marta are related through marriage as well. God, it's all. I agree with Noah.
No, it wouldn't be just related. Adam, it wouldn't be just related through marriage. It would be related because wouldn't Bartos be Agnes the father of Agnes, and Agnes is the grandmother.
Burn it all down. I'm with Adam. I'm on Adam's side now. Just burn it all. Start again. Jesus Christ.
Okay, so then Marta gets put in the fryer.
Yep.
I can't quite remember the very end of this scene. I know eventually it goes into Magnus and Franziska in Alt World for the apocalypse, but at the end of the scene, do we see? I think it all encompasses her, and I think it ends with it just flying around her, and we don't really know what's going to happen. That's how.
I mean, it doesn't. The implication is it's not good. She sort of lets loose this really like blood curdling scream. We haven't really heard any characters like properly scream in pain yet, and this is just this moment where it's like I don't know why, but for some reason it got to me. It's kind of like I don't know what it's doing to her, but the scream to me implied she's almost like the reality of her being is being like torn apart. Like it's not just physical. It's kind of almost it's like metaphysical, I guess. It's like there's something being like rendered within her that is worse than just being killed, and it's awful the way it's presented. And Adam seems to be kind of he looks remorseful, and I also think it's really heartbreaking that this is, I think, the first time we've heard anyone refer to Adam as Jonas to his face. I don't think anyone else has ever done it, which kind of brings you back into the core of the relationship that these two have, where they do love each other, or they did love each other at one point, but this is where it ends for one of our alt martyrs, and then we go into our apocalypse montage.
Yep, and Franziska and Magnus do a Rogue One.
Yep, just watch as the world burns.
Yeah, exactly.
It's quite touching though, and I think there's a lot of good stuff in this montage. In fact, actually, the music as well, I think it's either Block Party or just Kelly Okereke singing. I don't know whether it's a sample because I don't recognize the song, but it's another really cool song choice. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff in this apocalypse montage. And I'm trying to remember Oh, there was something I wanted to talk to you about. Oh, we see Stranger looking more and more like a character from The Prestige. That was a big bit of it.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed.
He does look like, he looks like what do you call him? Tesla or something? Yeah.
Yeah, he looks a lot like Nikola Tesla. But yeah, it's a great montage to end the show, and then just the explosion to black, and we're left wondering what's going to happen in the next episode.
2 more to go. Right, let's get into the roundup.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so the IMDb rating for Light and Shadow, Licht und Schatten, is 9.3, which is actually less than last week. Last week's was 9.4. I mean, at this stage, they're all sort of in that area, but
yeah, they're all kind of bad. Like, it's funny actually. I went into this one having pretty low expectations because I think you said to me last week that this wasn't as well received as the previous episode, but I thought this was a great one.
Well, and the comments based on last week as well, they said that some people are actually saying that this episode was their favorite.
I thought it was a great episode.
It's a great, to be honest, it's a great. See the second half of this series, this season 3. There's not a bad episode. There isn't a bad episode. I'm just thinking of things that happen in 7 and 8. I'm just thinking of those episodes, and in my mind, I think I think the inflection point reveal is and then the Eva's soldiers and then Marta getting obliterated probably are big enough occurrences for this episode to be viewed in the same way. And I just have to say I was incorrect when I looked back on what this episode was going to be. I was less excited for it. Having said that, I think I was wrong to not be excited for it.
Yeah, I thought this was an absolute banger. That was a really good episode. I mean, I'm super looking forward to 7 and 8 because if they up the ante on this, then we might have a couple of tens on our hands, or 5s, or whatever you want, like however you want to rate them. But yeah, this was a great episode. I loved the I love the way it is able to very quickly explain to you the concept of and the ramifications of the inflection point stuff. Like, I could see a lot of shows with worse writing getting bogged down in the really stodgy science of that, and which is not to say that this doesn't address the science. It does. It just does it in a really kind of light, smart way where it's like, here's how this works. Trust us. We'll get you there. And then they show us 17 different martyrs, or however many we end up with.
In fact, quantum entanglement. They gave us the scientific buzzword too.
Exactly. I think quantum entanglement was a term used in Mass Effect, the video game, to talk about, they basically quantum entangle 2 atoms, which then allow you to talk across really long distances in Mass Effect. So I think it maybe is a real concept.
It is a real concept. How, obviously they're taking a scientific concept and applying it to a narrative. So I haven't really looked it up, to be honest with you.
There was one thing I wanted to mention actually in the montage, which I forgot to, which is that during the montage we see Claudia turning up, Prime Claudia, with the pipe in the scene where Alt Claudia meets her for the first time.
Yeah, that's how she came into the room, because she thought.
Yeah. So is that implying that what we saw with Alt Claudia, like, it's the first time that the show hasn't done, I know it obviously doesn't have a linear narrative in traditional sense, but things are still kind of happening at the same time across the different timelines, if you like.
Well, I think that one was definitely like in the past. Like
that just really stood out to me as like, oh, we're doing like non-linear narrative now. Like that scene you showed us between the Claudias actually happened before everything in this episode, I guess, or after everything in this episode. But yeah, that just stood out to me as a new narrative technique that they're employing, which again, 2 episodes from the end of your show.
I think to be honest with you, it's also like they were doing that anyway with the unknown going to the power plant, because that wasn't on the same day, and I think that they probably talked about that, and they were like, well, should we show Claudia meeting up with Claudia again at the same time? But we want to really hammer home that this is the moment where she actually went back to do that thing we were already seen. Yeah. So I think they are breaking away from the mold a little bit, just to sort of make sure that we all
2 episodes left.
Yeah, we're putting the pieces in the right place in our mind where they need to be. Yeah. And I think if they showed us a different scene between them talking, because I'm sure they did meet up more than once, but if they showed us a different scene, then maybe more of the audience wouldn't have cottoned on to actually it's all happening the same way it always has,
yeah. It stood out to me. But yeah, sorry to go back to the general thoughts. I can't wait for the 7 and 8. I trust that they will land this plane, but as I say, I don't think it's landing on the runway that I thought it was at the beginning of this episode.
Yeah, an alternate runway.
Yeah, an alternate runway.
Inflected. But all right, yeah, cool. Right, well, what about we get into a wee segment then?
Yeah, let's do it.
What the dub?
This week in What the Dub, very, very simply, whenever they were talking about all the different characters and Adam was listing them, the actor who plays Adam said Agnes and Silja.
Nice. This is one of the few times where I'm going to repeat a joke that we mentioned before we started recording. But it's frankly, and the listeners, you will thank me for doing this. Don't you worry.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one.
Frankly, it bears repeating, and that is that this character will now be known as Silja Boy for the rest of the show.
Silja Boy. So was it Superman? That ho.
Yeah, Superman. That ho being Bartos.
Oh, that's your theory.
Yeah. Look forward to the problem with that as well is this is going to be like a Tronte situation where I eventually got away from calling him Tronte because like I pronounced his name, I heard his name pronounced correctly enough times that it stopped affecting me. But I've only got 2 episodes left of Silja, so I know next episode I'm just going to call her fucking Silja.
Silja Boy.
Yeah, Silja Boy.
Yeah, to be honest with you,
that's awful.
So they say stuff like Niewald, right? So they've decided very much not to do the V, Niewald. They've decided not to do that, right?
Yeah.
Which is fair enough. But you have to question that decision when it gets to the point where you're saying Silja. Like, that's so wrong. There's no... Can you imagine only ever watching this show? Like, maybe you're someone who's never watched a show from a foreign language before, and you're watching it in English dub, and then and then you're watching it, and then forever you think that character is called Silja.
I mean, to be honest, at the point that you're doing that, why not just rename the characters? Like, I feel like mispronouncing someone's name is way worse than just being like, okay, she's going to be called Sophie in the English version because we don't want to engage with the German pronunciations of these words. It's like what do you? I guess it's harder when maybe some characters their names are written down or something, so maybe it's harder to kind of to get around that. But it's
is Silja written down? We'll only have to wait and see.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess it is. Well, it must be. It must be on that floor. When we look at that floor, I can't wait to look at that floor and see what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I also don't want you to look at that floor prior to us having the chat about it, okay? Because we'll give you a copy of it, and we'll both look at the copy together. All right?
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Okay. Also, so that was What the Dub. Pretty unremarkable, but it's also stupid, you know.
Just like really hammering home the lack of respect the people who dubbed this show had for the original.
I know, stupid.
A stranger from the outside.
All right, so the questions this week, we've got a few of them. First one comes from Marvin. Marvin says, this is to Conrad, obviously, thoughts on the full Eret Lux lineup? Some really came out of nowhere, but it's interesting how all of these characters are on the same side in this world when they were happily betraying and murdering each other in the other one. Is Eva just a better leader than Adam?
I think she just gets them younger. I think this is what Adam's trying to do by like recruiting kids into his club in like the 1920s. But Eva's just better at it. But I guess actually thinking about it, you've got Bartos, Claudia, Egon, so they're all Tiedemans. If my theory is right, you've also got Noah, who is a Tiedemann, and then by by extension of that, if my theory holds, then Marta is also, although she's a Nielsen, she's also related to Bartos because he's like a great grandfather.
Yeah,
so they're basically. I mean, I know this is true of pretty much all characters in Dark at this point, but there's a very sort of direct line of lineage there. Whereas when you look at Sigmundus, they're a bit more scattershot. Although I suppose they
it would be the same line of. It would be the same line in both worlds, wouldn't it?
Well, he's got like the Dopplers aren't involved. So Ellie and Charlotte aren't involved, or don't appear to be. Anyway, I guess Ellie is kind of involved because she's
it still has to happen the same way.
Yeah, but they're not. But like, I mean, we haven't seen a sort of haggard version of Ellie and Charlotte in like the post-apocalyptic world who are like working with Eva. So I mean, I guess that probably does happen, but then maybe they're given less to do in that reality.
Yeah, Eva's like a real control freak over it.
Yeah, but it's very cool. I loved seeing the lineups of the quote unquote the boys, even though there are plenty of women in there as well.
Yeah. Like the to me, I honestly chuckled out loud whenever Egon was in that lineup.
Oh yeah, Egon. Like, how did you get in there, Egon? Do you think he was out buying milk or something, and he just stumbled into like the Eric Lux headquarters in like the 1950s, and he just was too polite to say anything, and he got roped into the cull?
Yeah, 100%. That's what happened. So Cabu Cross says, question for both of you. What do you think about the reveal that Alexander is Boris? Do you think he's brainwashed by someone, or does he really think his name is Boris? I mean, we know his name is Yasin.
Yeah.
The moment Eva sent everyone to do something, was there a moment? Yeah. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's obviously a cover. Like he's telling Bartos the truth, but not the whole truth. Bartos isn't ready for that yet.
Yep.
He'll take the Yasin secret to his grave.
Yeah, that one is one that he can't give up, really, because that's sort of the thread to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because he is the Minotaur.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
So the moment Eva sent everyone to do something was the moment I really could feel that there is a war to control time.
Yeah.
They really felt like soldiers sent to do their mission. This episode also had one of my favorite montages. I think we could disagree with you there, Cabu Cross. I think you're pretty on line.
I think that was spot on. The interesting thing about this episode is how it recontextualizes a lot of what's come before it, which I think is an example of really strong writing, because I've spent most of this series trying to get my head around what Adam is actually trying to achieve, because he's like, I want to blow up everything, and then I'd be like, but why? And and it wouldn't really give you that answer, and it was in some ways frustrating, but also the rest of the show's writing is good enough that it doesn't really detract from that. But then in this episode, and to a lesser extent the last episode, you really get your sides laid out. It's like, okay, here's Eric Lux, here's Sigmundus, this is they're off to war to we're getting to the climax of this fight, and we finally understand the full scope of like what they're actually doing and why they want to do it, and it's really satisfying to get to that moment.
Yeah, exactly. Beatrice says, do you think that the reason Eva is more successful in her plans is because all versions of herself are aligned? I mean, Jonas and the Stranger are always at war with themselves, fighting not only Adam but also against each other, while all martyrs have the same goal. Her cult is also apparently formed by people who want to do their part rather than reluctant participants. I think you're onto something there, Beatrice, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think Eva's definitely organised her people better. But having said that, Eva played her hand, I think, when she killed, when she had Jonas killed. And I think she might have done it too early. Whereas Adam has waited until he basically has... I guess he's doing kind of the same thing, but his way of dealing with Marta seems a lot more what's the word I'm looking for, like definite, than just shooting Jonas. Like he seems to be doing something to Marta that is significant, or potentially more significant for both worlds. So I think Eva, although she may have the appearance of being more organized, I think she may have played her hand a little early. Because I definitely, coming out of this episode, I definitely felt like Sigmundus had the upper hand.
Yeah, like the way that, she's saying Adam has never figured it out, and then all of a sudden you see, Adam knows it's the Origin, he knows how to destroy the Origin.
Yeah.
So that is really interesting. At the end of this episode, definitely you think, well, Eva's a bit of a fool. She doesn't know what Adam's up to.
But I'm fully expecting, talking about that boxing match feeling, I'm fully expecting next episode to have a couple of exchanges of blows where the sides kind of switch in terms of their position of power.
Yep, looking forward to hearing your thoughts on whatever happens. So MH has asked a couple of questions. I think we answered both of these, but I didn't want to just ignore you, MH, because there aren't very many questions this week. First thing says, how did the cleanup crew survive the apocalypse when they didn't seem to make any attempt to leave? Well, I think I gave that answer in the main episode there, where they weren't actually in the same time as the apocalypse.
Yeah, I guess so.
They weren't in 2019.
Only the middle one was in... Oh, no, they're both in the 80s.
They're both in the 80s in different worlds, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the next one, in what way will Egon make sure that Hannah survives the apocalypse and his lineage will be continued? Well, I think we talked about that extensively.
Yeah, he's taken her, get her pregnant, and then have a whole bunch of babies.
And Conrad has a lot of big theories about what those babies are going to do too.
Yeah.
Which is great. Master on your north, does Conrad think the Trinity were sabotaging at the time of the... Oh, okay, we've mentioned that already. We thought it was in the 80s. I initially thought, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I think we've answered that. Also, does Conrad think that Marta was actually killed by the energies of both apocalypses?
I feel like...
So, like, at the end of the episode, was she killed or not?
I'd be really surprised if we see a body after that. Like, it feels very, very...
It's like every single atom of her body was sent to a different time or something.
Yeah, like, have you seen the Watchmen movie?
No. Oh, yes,
Okay.
yes, I've seen the movie, yeah.
So the bit where like Billy Crudup gets turned into Dr. Manhattan,
Yeah.
he's in like the radiation chamber and he just gets pulled apart basically.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I imagine happened to Marta. So I mean, I think I think she is dead, but I think that doesn't really encapsulate the full totality of what was done to her.
Yeah.
Like it's not just she's dead, she just doesn't exist anymore, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think we'll see a body, but it definitely seems like she was. I think the word is obliterated.
Yeah, it didn't seem good. As I said before, she didn't seem to be enjoying herself. So yeah, I don't expect to see that Marta again.
Exactly. Okay, so question from Ella. Ella, I think it's Ella. As much as I love Dark, and I think it's one of the best shows I've made, one thing is not clear on. I'm not clear on, even to this day, in the alt world. Okay, so let's. I haven't actually pre-read this, so hopefully there's not really anything to spoilery in the explanation. But
Okay.
We'll try and do it for you. In the alt world, Eva's world, if Mikkel never time traveled to the past and Jonas was never born, did not exist, how did Helge get his eye injury? Do you think Ulrich still went back in time to try and kill him? Also, was Helge involved with killing those missing kids with Noah, even though Sigmundus never existed in Eva's world? So I think we're going to be very vague here because we haven't really seen everything that's happened, but I think it's very much alluded to that Ulrich is now following Helge into the caves like he did in the first season. So, Conrad, I think this particular commenter here proves my point that I do believe showing these scenes was necessary for everyone's understanding that things still happen the way they should happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, my understanding is, Ulrich has followed Helge into, I guess it'd be the 80s, given where we know the cave goes.
Well, we've sort of surmised, it's like the future, it's 2019 and the 80s. Yeah, that's what we said.
So you know, he's gone to the 80s to do it. I assume that the timeline is going to proceed pretty much as it did in the Prime world. And you know, talking about Sigmundus not existing, I'm assuming Eric Lux are doing pretty much the same stuff that Sigmundus are doing in terms of chucking bodies around the place so that they're found by the people that need to find them.
Yeah, I think that this inclusion of the Ulrich storyline is to show you that everything that we're not really seeing is still happening. Yeah. Also, I will say, Ella, I'm not going to confirm or deny this for Conrad, but there may or may not be a scene at some point in the next 2 episodes which basically gives you the answer to that question. So that just shows me maybe a rewatch is in order, I think. And a rewatch is in order, which is never a bad thing, let's be honest. Okay, so Frack and Toaster Lover says, question for both of you. If you had to choose between Adam and Eva's goals, assuming there is no third option, obviously, yeah, because it's all predetermined, there has to be one of them, you must choose one or the other. Which would you prefer, keeping the loop going endlessly or destroying everything?
I mean, it's a bit of a Sophie's choice, really. Like, I think in purely pragmatic terms, it's better for one reality to exist than none. So I would probably side with Eva, but in terms of like empathizing with the characters, I'm very much on Adam's side. And it's like, no, like Adam has basically got to the point of mutually assured destruction in this, where it's like, if you're taking my world down, I'm taking your world down, which I can kind of respect as a position. Petulant though it may be, I understand how he got there, but you know, if we're being purely pragmatic about it, I guess having one reality is better than none, even if it's a rubbish reality where there's a time loop.
Yeah, I'd probably agree. I think the reason why Adam wants to burn it all down is because of this weird loop of incest and stuff.
Yeah.
I think I would rather exist as a product of incest than not exist at all.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Having said that, I mean, Claudia's fixing this. I've got Claudia's the one that I've been holding on to for like 3 seasons of television. I'm like, what's Claudia up to? And I'm expecting her to come riding in with an assault rifle and a motorbike.
The way she fixes it, she just kills everyone.
Yeah, time's up, bitches, and then just like guns out down Eric Lux.
Yeah, well, that's we'll see. Wait and see. We'll wait and see. Okay, so last question from Handsome Head Injury. Why was Boris/Yasin going to stay home that day? Were he and Bartos going to play first-person shooters on the Nintendo PlayStation? on a Nintendo PlayStation?
Listen, first off, they weren't going to play first-person shooters. They were going to play The Surge, which is a Dark Souls-like game. All right, get it right. Actually, we haven't seen what old Bartos plays. Maybe he's really into like JRPGs or something. They're going to play Final Fantasy. Yeah, I think that's definitely what they were going to do.
No. You look at his hair. He plays Dead by Daylight, and he's always the killer.
Yeah, old Bartos is definitely a problematic Twitch streamer who occasionally has like heated gamer moments where he drops racial slurs.
Yeah,
on the internet.
And I think this from Handsome Head Injury is a brilliant thought to end on, because we mentioned it earlier ourselves. Boris/Yasin says Regina is the best thing that ever happened to him. No mention of Bartos. Even his dad thinks he's just meh. Yeah.
Like
I mean, to be honest with you, meh is probably the most positive feeling anyone's ever had towards Bartos.
Yeah, I mean, Bartos, the fact that anyone thinks of him at all is he should be grateful, frankly.
Right, guys, that's us this week. Thanks very much for watching and listening. We are going to be back next week for episode 7. Ho, 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 it's hotting up now. I cannot wait. Episode 7 is a lot of people's favorite episode of the whole show. So looking forward to it. Make sure that you leave a comment for Conrad or a question for Conrad for next week. We're really getting there now. So if you just want to leave a comment, we're also going to be doing a retrospective on Conrad's thoughts and also looking at that family tree. So if there's something in particular you want us to hone in on that, let us know. Apart from that, can you subscribe on audio apps? Can you subscribe on the YouTube channel? Give us a like. It really does help. Then could you also, if you really want to talk to us in private, away from those darn dastardly YouTube comments, you can send us an email at adpodmail@gmail.com. Apart from that, I think we're ready. Oh, I've just said apart from that again. I will keep saying it because it's involuntary. It's involuntary at this point. But apart from that, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the After Dark podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode.